All right, so you're having intrusive thoughts. You want them gone. You don't want them coming anymore. They're annoying. They're scary. And I'm going to tell you how to get rid of them. And it's not exactly how you think. So first and foremost, subscribe to this channel. I make tons of recovery content for severe anxiety and everything that goes along with it. My name's Emily. Head to the description of this video. I've got my recovery guide. I've got my Facebook community and some other resources for y'all. So let's just dive right into this. When I was in the anxiety cycle, I dealt with some crazy intrusive thoughts on a daily basis that really scared me and really messed with my quality of life, to say the least. Thoughts that I'm not even going to get into. One, because it's like, I'm not going to sit here and trigger you with my weird thoughts that I used to have. Two, it's the internet and I'm just not going to do it, okay? But I will give you some basic examples. Just know if you've had them, I've probably had them too. So the first and most important thing to understand when it comes to intrusive thoughts are kind of rewinding and looking at the nervous system, what's going on with your body, and why are we having the thoughts in the first place, right? Because a lot of times we put too much credit into our thoughts. Why is this thought here? Why are we having this thought? What does this mean? Let's look at the big picture. So the big picture is that when you are in this state, your nervous system is sensitized, right? You've hit a stress threshold in your body, probably built up over years. Now we're boiling over. Once we hit the boil over, our body is now in this chronic state of fight or flight. We're getting symptoms. We're getting heart palpitations maybe, insomnia, panic attacks, derealization, dizziness, whatever it is, we're getting symptoms typically. And the first thing that I want you to do is take thoughts and put them into the symptom bucket, because they are just a symptom. There is nothing different between an intrusive thought and a heart palpitation from anxiety, right? So it's all the same, right? It's just a symptom of a sensitized nervous system, because when you're in this state, your body is seeking out danger in every way. It's trying to protect you, right? And so it's looking around and it's like, could that be dangerous? What about that? What about that? What about that? What if you do this? What if you do that? And that can often show up in thoughts. The next thing that I want you to understand is that when it comes to thoughts, your intrusive thoughts are typically going to revolve around what matters to you the most: your marriage, your faith, your sanity, right? You harming somebody, your children, all that kind of stuff. And that's what it's going to show up in. And why? Because that's what you're going to respond to the most, right? If somebody came up to me and said, your name's actually Jessica, I'm like, no, it's Emily, right? It's not Jessica. Okay. It flies away. But when you're in the anxiety cycle and this thought comes up to you and it's like, what if you go crazy? What if you get schizophrenia? What if you, harm your family? What if you harm yourself? What if you insert, keeps going down that trail. Now this feels really scary, right? This feels like, where'd that thought come from? Why would I have this thought? What does this thought mean? Am I going to do this? What if I go crazy and just do it? One, that's not how anxiety works, right? Anxiety doesn't force you to act upon a thought. These thoughts are just fears. They're fears of like worst case scenario. So boil them down to that. Understand this is just a symptom, right? Thoughts are a symptom. Thoughts mean nothing when you're in the anxiety cycle, okay? So that's probably like the most important part when it comes to handling these thoughts. Second is, how do we respond to these thoughts, right? And I will tell kind of a story, right? Somebody recently that I was helping with coaching was dealing with some intrusive thoughts around their marriage. And it was like, what if I don't love my spouse anymore? Okay? Random thought, meant nothing to them, especially knowing their situation. It doesn't mean anything about their marriage, okay? Here's the problem. This person, instead of saying, okay, just a thought, uncomfortable, but move on, is now thinking, why do I feel this way? Why are these thoughts about marriage happening? Now we're going to counseling about our marriage. We don't have a marriage problem. Now we're telling our spouse, hey, I love you. You know that, right? Because we want to get rid of this thought. We want the thought to not mean anything, but we're actually engaging with it because we're doing these behaviors that we wouldn't normally do. I'm not saying don't tell your spouse you love them. That's fine, obviously. But when we're doing it as like a mechanism of, oh, I don't want to feel this. Hey, I love you, right? Right? I do, right? Huh? Now we're engaging with this thought that was simply a random adrenaline thought in the first place. Another example, say that you're driving and you're like, what if I pass out, okay? And then you start getting all these thoughts and fears about passing out, and now we're like, oh my gosh, I might actually pass out. I gotta pull over. Now we're engaging with these thoughts again, so it can be like that type of a thought too, right? Something that's revolving around a symptom. The list goes on and on. I can give you lots of examples of thoughts and, how to respond to them. I will give you one example of the thought that I had, and it's when I was recovering, 2 scary thoughts that I had. One, past the kitchen knife set fears of, what if I grab the knife and hurt myself or hurt somebody else, right? So I made the mistake of putting the knives up, putting them in the cabinet, putting them away. Get them away from me. I'm dangerous. I wasn't dangerous. There was no reason to think that. I was just scared of all these what ifs, right? I already felt out of control in my body. I already had all these symptoms, all these thoughts. I felt like, where are these coming from? What could I do, right? The next thought is medication. So when I was recovering, I had Xanax in my house. And then I had this fear of, well, what if I were to just take all the Xanax and overdose, I wouldn't do that. I didn't want to do that for sure, right? I was scared for my life, right? But I felt like, what if I go crazy? What if my body makes me do that? Because again, I didn't understand these thoughts. And I felt like, why even have the thought? Why would the thought even cross my mind? What's next? Instead of realizing, again, these thoughts are just adrenaline. These thoughts are just a symptom. They're just catastrophizing. The more we engage, the more they are there, right? The more they show up. So how do we handle these thoughts? In my recovery guide, in the bio, I've got an acronym called IDEAL. And it's meant to basically prevent you from negatively engaging with things, from thoughts, from symptoms, from life. So take a thought. Let's take the medication thought, for example. What if I do this? Okay, disclaimer, I did not want to do this, right? If you want to do this, it's a whole other problem, but I did not, right? So I have this thought. If I were to use IDEAL, it would look like this. Identify, having this scary, intrusive thought about this, okay? Designate, this is just my nervous system. This is just the state my body's in. This is just adrenaline. This is just anxiety, whatever you want to call it, right? Embrace. All right, this thought can linger. Ugh, gross, don't like the thought. Oh well, just a thought, don't need to engage, move on. The shortened version of this can look like, ugh, just a thought, nope, not gonna engage, no need to engage, move on. Nope, move on, nope, move on. All day long. And what I want to tell you is the goal is not to get the thought to go away. Why? Because what happens if it pops back up? Are we engaging again? Are we stepping back into this cycle again? The goal is to learn how to respond without adding engagement to unproductive things, right? So when you master that, that's what my guide's about, is the long-term recovery approach here, not the short-term approach. When you master that, you're going to be fine for the rest of your life. Not to say your body won't get stressed. Maybe you'll get a panic attack. Maybe you'll get some symptoms here and there, but you're not going to fall back into this anxiety cycle, because the cycle is engagement. If you're not engaging, it takes 2 to tango. It's just annoying at that point, right? Another thing is, as a Christian, when I was facing these thoughts, I had all these fears of like, where are these thoughts coming from? Obviously, they're not coming from God, right? And I started to get on this path of like, this is spiritual warfare, which, yeah, anxiety is not from God. This is clear, right? But it scared me, and it was making things even worse, because then I was engaging with the thoughts, and I was scared of the thoughts, and I was engaging with what the spiritual warfare. What do I do? And it became this whole thing. And I want to be clear, right? As a believer, all the content that I have, like, yes, it's brain retraining sort of stuff, but it's all based on a biblical foundation, okay? When you think of the Bible and God says, transform your mind, don't be like the world, transform your mind. Don't worry about anything. Don't be anxious about anything, but pray about everything. And you have these commands and you're like, okay, cool, but how? But how when I'm having these scary freaking thoughts all the time? What do I do? And IDEAL, this brain retraining mechanism is meant to conform your mind to what Jesus, calls us, to how God created our minds to work. And when we take a thought and we go, okay, the Bible says, take the thought captive. Okay, what does that mean, right? Well, it means take the thought. It's just a thought. We're not going to engage with it. Move on, right? The thought is now not holding us captive, right? It's just a thought. Back to doing the dishes. And Ideal teaches you how to do that. So if you are also a believer and you are really struggling with this whole like taking thoughts captive and all this verbiage in the Bible, I want you to understand that Ideal biblically conforms your mind to how the Bible commands it to be. Okay? So just want to throw that out there too. So what I want you to do again is go to my guide, read the whole thing, read it again, read it again, read it again, okay? It's like 50 something pages of pure recovery gold, honestly, content-wise, and print out the worksheets and start doing it. Join my Facebook group. I've got a Monday Q&A thread. You can ask questions on there. You can ask questions in my comments. I want to engage with you guys. But know that there's a way out. This is not how you are stuck, okay? Do not take on the identity of anxiety. That's a huge problem unless you want to be anxious forever, which you probably don't. Don't do it, okay? This is your nervous system. It's a state that your body's in. Maybe you've been this way forever. Maybe you haven't. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be this way moving forward, okay? So again, download my guide and stay connected with me.